Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly Node-RED development livestream. Back after a holiday last week, so here we are, all refreshed for a new uninterrupted run of weeks of building up to the Node-RED 3.0 release. Only a couple months away, not that long, all things considered. So yeah, we should have quite an interesting series of streams as we work towards the 3.0 release. Going to be a mix of bug fixing, of new feature development, that type of stuff. And as ever, if there's particular things you would like to see me cover, do mention in the chat, drop me a message, however you want to do it. Always keen for these live streams to be useful for you guys in the audience. Already great to see some guys in the chat. Softy2K, Hally77, Bobby Tables, Micho, Noxy Boy, Security Live. I believe this is the first time I think I've seen you in the chat. Welcome, everyone. Dunnan, welcome. Now it's easy for me to see. You can't see the chat. So let's switch over. And there you can just about see the chat. What is the... Oh, I'm not going to faff with colours. And Steve's here as well. Welcome, Steve. So do say hi if you're in the chat. If you're watching the replay on YouTube, do drop in a comment. Always like to know you're there. Like and subscribe. All that good stuff makes YouTube like us when people watch it and do stuff. So what are we up to tonight? Well, this is something I'd thrown together a very high-level proof of concept a couple of weeks ago. Maybe a month ago. Sometime. It's irrelevant. It's in the past. And I spent a bit of time on my holiday last week, not worrying about the day job, but stole a bit of time to spend on this feature. And what is this feature? This feature is wiring junctions. So this is, you can see this little dot here. This is the idea of having a way to help route wires and help organize wires. So what we've got is the ability to, let me cancel that. So here you've got this one node connected to 4. It's a super common request is that users would like to have an easy way to insert a node so that, it just partly tidies up the wiring, but also gives them sort of a single point closer to these nodes. So you don't have so many wires going across the screen, which to date you could do with, say, a function node or a change node with its default rule removed. Super lightweight ways of doing it. Change node is probably the lightest way of doing it. There's a surprising number of third-party contributed nodes that I still see new ones get published that are literally just no-op nodes to do exactly this. It always makes me chuckle when I see someone else publish their version of a node that does nothing, and it is, all intents and purposes, identical to all the others that do nothing. Anyway, so what we've got is, so all of this work is already in a pull request, 3462, so I'm just going to give you a quick demo of what's already there, and then there's a couple bits which I wanted to make a start on, so I thought I'd make a start on tonight because it also feeds in some other bits for 3.0. So the way you create a junction is you press and hold the shift key, you then right click drag, and then the wires you drag over are ones which are going to get replaced with a junction. So you can see I've sliced those 4 wires. When I release the mouse button, it has found the average point of where I cut all those wires and then dropped in one of these junctions. So they look like ports. They're let me, can I, there we are, zoom. So they look like ports, but they are fully rounded. You can click and drag them around. You can do everything you might want to do. Okay, now I've zoomed in that much, I can't actually see what I need. You can connect new wires to a port. I think they pretty much behave largely as you would expect. So I could stick another one up there. I could slice those two and stick a port down there. And that's all good. Then now, because when you click and drag on a junction, it moves it. If you want to create a wire that starts at a junction, you have to press and hold the control key when you click on the node. And then, just as like when you control click on a port, you go into this sort of, you go into that quick wiring mode, as we call it. You can do the same. And you'll see when you do that, it treats the junction as an output. So the wire always starts at the junction. But you can then wire it to another junction. That's just because we have to pick a direction, and that's the direction I've picked. So that's all nice, and yeah, all of the sort of, there's a ton of work has gone into getting things like the undo history working, even just copy and paste. I mean, I've now just created a junction with no wires, but by copying and pasting that other junction. But that's a key point. When you copy and paste a junction, it doesn't bring the wires with it. It's like copy and pasting a node. Steve asks, do these new junctions have properties in the flow? So that's a really good question. No. Well, yes and no. So what do I mean? Well, in terms of what they actually look like in the flow file, if I select those three, so the inject, this function, and that junction, and if I hit export, you can see the junction shows up in the list of exported nodes. If we look at the JSON, there we've got the function node, which we can ignore. There we've got the inject node, which we can ignore. Coming down here, you can see there is a new node type of junction. So it has an ID and it's got the wires array. So in the flow file, it just looks like a node. And in fact, in the runtime, it is just a node. There's definitely scope for optimizations where the runtime knows about junctions, so can sort of no-op them entirely and sort of rework the wiring as if those junctions don't exist. But I haven't done that at this stage. That premature optimization and all that. So they are nodes in the flow file, so they could have properties, but double clicking on them does nothing. In the info sidebar, when you select them, there is no properties table. It is just, you just get the ID of it. In fact, they don't show up in the info sidebar. They don't show up in the info sidebar. They aren't things you can disable. They aren't things you can do anything with. That's what we're doing. Yes, they could have properties because of how they're represented in the flow file, but I'm simply just not entertaining that for 3.0. So that's all good. Any other bits and pieces to talk about? So for backwards compatibility, which is always a concern, like we did for groups, we could choose to publish node-red node junction as a node that introduces the junction type, and we'll publish that. We can publish that module so that it refuses to load in Node-RED 3.0. So users could install that in Node-RED 2.0 or earlier, or Node-RED 2.x. Then they would be able to import a flow generated in 3.0. And yes, okay, instead of having the neat little dots, they would have an actual physical node, and we'll make it look like a link node so it's compact. But at least then, I mean, that's one of the reasons of choosing the flow file format to just have them as quote unquote nodes in the flow file. yeah, so we'll be able to do something there so that flows created with 3.0 with these junctions in could get imported into older versions of Node-RED, as long as that older version of Node-RED has installed the Node-RED node junction node. Yeah, so that's something we will look at doing. Now, the bit I wanted to have a look at tonight, which does feed into some other 3.0 type items, is right now, when you're starting from a clean workspace, the only way to get a junction, because the junction, it's a special type of node, it doesn't show up in the palette, you can't drag one on. The only way to do it, as I mentioned earlier, was to press and hold the shift key and then right click, drag to slice the wires that you want to add the junction to. You may be thinking, well, it looks very similar to the control right click drag we added, which actually cuts the wires. This is shift right click drag, which adds in the junction. Anyway, there's an accessibility issue over any sort of mouse action, and we do want to put a bit of thought into how else could we support adding a junction. Now, there's a few different things to do. One of which is an action, which, as in, add a split wire with junction action. That would so if you had for the wires you had selected, be able to do that action and get it to insert a junction. So that's item one. There is a whole series of thoughts about a right mouse button context menu, which is going to be a different stream. That's not tonight's stream. The other one that I was thinking to look at tonight, although having just talked through the action, that might be a better one to do on the stream. But what I was also thinking about was we have the control left click, the quick add dialog. I know there's some features to add to this dialog that I wanted to consider. So right now it just lists all the nodes and you can filter to find the node. But I think we can do some other useful things in this pop-up dialog. In terms of, I think there are some other things you might want to do in the context of adding something to the workspace. So if we think of this as more of the add to workspace type menu, which a right-click menu could pull up. But if we just focus on this one for now, the two things, the number of times I've got some flow JSON on my clipboard that I've copied from the forum, and I come in here and I want to import it, and every time I control click, and then I think, no, actually I had to hit Control I to bring up the import nodes dialog. Now again, a right click context menu would be another way of solving this, but I've always thought this dialog, it could have some other buttons up here in the top right, maybe, or somewhere in it, easily accessible. So one to click to bring up the import dialog, but there could also be one to click to add a junction. Or maybe we just have junction in this list. I will say, I mean, there is, for touchscreen users, there is a context menu already. Just seeing some of the comments, Noxy Boy, absolutely, yeah. A context menu is coming. We already have one if you're on a touch device. If you press and do a long touch on the workspace, it brings up a radial menu, which gives you like copy and paste and delete and edit. So yeah, we're going to look at that and think about either scrapping it, either replacing it with a more traditional menu, or maybe the right-click menu is a different thing altogether. I don't know. Anyway. Yes, the question is whether this list should have junction. Well, the two options are, one is add a toolbar up in this corner that gives you sort of quick click access to add to the import dialog, and then could be a button to add the junction node. But as I talk it through, and this is what's good about this, why I enjoy doing this live stream, is I'm actually talking these things out loud. And as I talk it through, I think it would be perhaps a mistake to add. If we're doing a context menu, then I think it would be a mistake to overload this with other buttons. But maybe the answer is we just want to have junction added to this list of nodes as a type of thing you can add. And in fact, we can, we have the top five, the 5 common ones come up here, so we could add it as a 6th junction. And that's probably going to be the swiftest and neatest way of doing it. So let's do it. So here we are. We're in Node-RED repository, packages, at node modules, at Node-RED, editor client, source, JS, UI, nice and deep, type search. So type search is what we call this dialog internally. What we need to do is go and find how do we populate this list of nodes, and how do we hard code in junction. That is the question. So I'm just refresh type. Okay. So it's always with a lot of the way we have structured the Node-RED, all the code in the editor. Each of these files at the bottom of it should return basically its API. How do we drive it? And for a dialog, I think there's a fairly clear set. There's a show, hide, and this refresh. So let's go look at what refresh does. So this will be getting called whenever new nodes are added or removed from the new nodes are added to the palette, but it also will get called. So if I just control click here, notice it has inject debug function. Basically it has nodes which are both output only, input only, and mid flow nodes. If I control click and I keep the control button down and I hit inject, it then quick adds the wire, and then I can just click again. And notice now inject isn't there because it knows I've got this wire waiting to connect to something. So it refreshes the list to filter it so that only offers the nodes that are suitable. Oops. So yeah. So why is that relevant? So refresh type list gets called with an options object, and here you can see it. That can include a filter to decide should a node be displayed or not. Which at the moment is based on, let me just look at yeah, we might have to think a little about what makes sense, because if you're doing this quick add where you're wiring a chain of nodes quickly, I don't think it would make sense to have, no, it would make sense to have junction in that list, because junction has, yeah. Sorry, I'm sort of speaking out loud, but for now I'm just going to put junction on that list. So now when I click, oh, there is no junction. Okay. So it wasn't as simple as sticking it on that list. Let me just... Oh, right, yep. So here's where we're actually build. So this is just where we've hard-coded the list of the common ones that should be at the top, or should be at the top if, apart from the other rules about what ends up at the top. Here's where we actually do the work to get them to the top. You can see this just iterates over that array. It goes and gets its definition, and if that definition exists, it adds an item to the list. Now, the way junctions work is red.nodes.getType won't return anything. So what we need to do is just think for a moment about how best to get this working with junctions, which kind of sort of exist in a slightly odd state within the editor. Just see what some of the chat says. So maybe if you have multiple wires, highlight offers a junction node at the top of the list. Yeah, maybe we could play around with that. Halley77, when displaying junction node in control click menu, why not show the junction node in the node palette in the left window? That's a valid question, and we might iterate towards that. The thing being, because it's not a node, and we're trying to keep it distinct from being conceptually a node, then it doesn't show up in the palette. And I don't know what it would look like in the palette over here, because it's not a node. It looks different. So, yeah, but this is why we're kind of doing this work, to try and figure out what these things should look like. So, I'm just trying to think. Yeah. So, for now, we're just going to hard code in a special case for yeah. Oh, that might do it. That might do it, or that might cause loads of errors. But oh, there. So we have junction, but when I click on it, we get errors. But that's okay. Well, it's not okay. But junction is now showing up. A few things are wrong. So this icon is wrong. We don't want it looking like that. We want it looking like I have it in the... I can deploy that so I have a junction to hand. It should look like this rather than being a proper node icon. Yeah. So we just need to sort of step through a bit and just work out, okay, how is it building the appearance? And it's all of this stuff here. So this is building up the list. It's, you can see here, get node color, get node icon, all of that. We just need to go and have a look at, do these guys, get node icon. So already got support for the junction type. Except, yeah. So at the moment this, because I copied the logic for groups as another example of a node that isn't a node. But crucially, groups don't appear in this list, and nor should they. Yeah, what we need here is a bit more of a special case. I think that should do it. So in the case we are looking at here, get node icon, you can see we're only passing in the node definition because we're dealing with abstract nodes, not real nodes. So this get node icon, node won't be defined. So down here where we were previously checking that is node defined and if its type is junction, carry on. But we also care if actually, otherwise, if the definition type is junction, we should also return the right thing. So now when I control click there, so you can see it's got the right icon, but it's still got the appearance of a node, and we don't want that. So what else are we missing? So we've got get node color. Get node color, which does its thing. Ooh, I'm trying to remember because I fixed this for groups, or I found what. Basically, there's a whole bunch of boilerplate code which has been, it's already been pulled into a utility function, yet the type search doesn't make use of the utility function. Where is it? Here. It's create node icon. So this does all the work to actually create a real node icon. And we do it with CSS rather than color. So I'm going to say if object type is a junction, then nodediv will add that class to, else we will set the background color to whatever the node color wants to be. Okay, it's still looking a little funky, but we're getting there. So it's not drawing the node body, but the icon's the wrong size and offline, and we don't want it drawing the ports either. Because again, what I'm aiming for is that appearance. And of course, we might decide this just looks wrong and abandon or change approach. So we don't want to display ports if it's a junction. There we are. So we've got the junction, but now we've got a bit of alignment to deal with. So if we just inspect it, what's going on to make that all go a bit awry? So the icon container has got a certain size. What's going on? I think what we want to be doing is we must be setting a font size. Yeah, so here's font size 18. I think that wants to be smaller. But if we make it smaller, have I got a good example of one of these nodes that uses a Font Awesome icon already? Have I got... there, annotate image. That's a Font Awesome icon, I'm pretty certain. So there's annotate image, and look, you can see its icon is pretty massive. If I scroll down the list, it's pretty massive compared to all the others. So I think we should be, in this instance, if I can find the right CSS, it's going to be Red UI palette icon FA. So I think we should, if I compare that to, am I still zoomed in a bit? No, because that does look pretty funky. Let's go find the CSS for this. CSS, and we're looking for, what are we looking for? Red UI palette icon FA. Oh, there's a few of them. Is it under search? UI type search, is that where we're in? We are, yeah, type search, UI search result, UI palette FA. Yeah. So I think we want to knock back this font size a couple. And I think there'll be some other tweaks will be apparent once we've does not seem to have taken. So font size 11. Just reload just to make sure. Oh no, that is, yes, that is a bit smaller. Now it looks to my eye that we want to bump it up a couple pixels. So in fact a couple more. So this always makes me nervous when I see a very specific value like -2.5. That does suggest to me I've been here before and tuned these pixels before. So yeah, that's gone too far up. If I do it, is it as simple as just -3? Yeah, so the annotate image one, I think that's looking... Annotate image is looking better. Junction, it's hard to tell because you haven't got the rest of the node there to see, but you know, if I that does look pretty. Does that look okay? Yeah. Okay, we're going to run with that for now. So what's the next issue? Well, the next issue is, as you can see here, when I actually selected it, we get an error. So why do we get an error? You need to go find the confirm function. And so then it doesn't add callback with the type. Yeah. So that then gets that gets passed back to whoever's shown this quick add dialog. So we need to go find type search.show here. So this is where it deals with actually displaying the quick search. And on here, add type add node. So we call add node and we pass in the string of the type name. So let's go find add node. Now I'm slightly intrigued. Does this get called? It's called there. It gets called there, which is all right. That's we're in chart.droppable. That's what handles dragging nodes in from the sidebar. Okay, so here we have the actual function, add node, and here's where it constructs the node to add. What we want to do here then is we want to add a junction, not a node, which, as I've said before, has to be handled slightly differently. So just scanning through what else. So we're back in the callback of the type search dialog, and you can see there's a bunch of work going on here around sorting out the undo history, and more, and more, and more, and more, and more. But, sorry, I'm just scanning through just to make sure there is some hope for what we're about to do. Yeah, I think. We're going to have a few special cases filtered through the code. Right, we're on line 1203. We'll be back. What we need to do is go find the call to add junction. Here we are. Thank you, Bobby Tables. I knew someone would drop it in there. So this is how we create a junction. Or this is what a junction node looks like. I'm just trying to work out, I need to go back and look at what does add node do. I'm trying to work out, is the right place to add this special code in here, or See, it creates a history event. Are there any plans to change the editor client to some kind of library such as React or Vue? No, there are no plans to rewrite the editor. It is vanilla, but it does lean on jQuery. That's the right way of thinking of it. No plans afoot to rewrite it in anything. Just from it's super hard to justify the engineering time and effort to rewrite the whole thing from scratch. Never say never, but hard to justify is my take on it. Had we picked a different toolkit from when I first started Node-RED, React Vue didn't exist. So if I'd picked a different toolkit, you'd be asking, why are you using a different toolkit? Why not rewrite it? And then in 2 or 3 years' time, it'll be, why don't you rewrite it in the next toolkit? So, it's if we had a fleet of developers we could afford to spend time just rewriting in and trying to keep current with toolkits as they evolve, that would be one thing. But we don't. We're an open source project. We rely on people's goodwill and personal time largely. And jQuery gets much maligned, but to be frank, it does the job. Now, the great thing is actually a ton of what you kind of had to use jQuery for 9 years ago when I first started Node-RED, you can actually now we don't care about Internet Explorer. We could probably do away with a lot of the jQuery we use, but there are bits of jQuery specific stuff that are just handy and just almost become second nature to use. So anyway, I'm just trying to think through what the right... I think what we're going to do is we're going to add junction X and Y. And we're just going to do it this way. We just set the whole thing up. We initialize it all properly. Let's go find where I did that before. All that. Yep. Oh, I've clicked around the wrong place now. 1203. Let's go back. Back. No, it's not 1203. I wanted to go find... Add node. Add junction. Yeah, I'm wavering. Right. What I'm trying not to do is fall into a bit of a rabbit hole of refactoring that will be a couple of hours just to get back to what we have. Because I'm not going to spend a couple of hours refactoring stuff. I'm only going to be here for another 20 minutes or so. So let's just get this working. If type equals junction, we do one thing. Else, we do this. And if it's of a type junction, we create our junction definition. And this is what, yeah, I will need to refactor this out before we merge it, but I'm just getting it in there now just to get the concept working. Right. Oh man, there's so much going on. Who thought this code? You know, who would have thought this code was? Yeah, Steve says he's done a fair bit of refactoring Vue.js for the split wires to link nodes. PR might be worth merging that first. I seem to remember commonizing some bits you're mulling over. Okay, I bear that in mind rather than. Oh, do we go down that rabbit hole? Do we get that merged and then rebase tonight? You know what, Steve? You're right. We need to get some. I need to work through your backlog of PRs and get them merged. I'm gonna treat this as a let's get the concept working and then go from there. And if what I end up doing is junking a bunch of this work, then hey, I've junked a bit of work, and I'm ever more grateful for the refactoring you may have done in that PR. So NN, terrible name of a variable, but it stands for new node, and history event so that, and history event is type add junctions, and then I think that's right. Then we set its X and Y. We don't care about labels. Then all of this, I think, should just kind of work. All of this should just kind of work. Then when we get down here, if new node.type is junction, and I will say I have done some due diligence in the flow library, and I know there are no nodes out there that register a node of type junction, because that would be awkward. Yeah. Okay, I think I've done enough now that there might be some horrible errors, but if I hit junction, yep, X is not defined. Okay. Ah, yes. So we'll just initialize them to 0, but then we know down here we set the X and Y to the proper points that it should get added. So, right, let's see. So if I click there and click junction, it's added a junction, and I can, with quick add enabled. That's worked. And if I control Z, it's removed and no errors. Awesome. Now, if I control click on this wire, and there we have an error. So this is, you can see it's in apply filter. Well, you may not be able to see, but in the stack, this is in apply filter. So this is where, because I'm clicking in the middle of a wire, it wants to filter the list so that it only does ones with both an input and an output, i.e. something that can get spliced in the middle. And it's complaining that inputs doesn't exist. Sorry, it can't read the property inputs of def. That's okay, well, and that's because we do this red nose get type. We can bypass that. Yeah, we put that in so it will never try and evaluate this side if the type is junction. And if it's a type junction, then it has both an input and an output. So now if I control click on here and hit junction, it's added the junction and it's on the wire, and I can control Z it, and that has worked. No errors. Can I? He says. I can splice it, I can control Z it, and control Y brings it back. Okay, that worked. If I control click on this one and add the junction, control Z it, it gets removed, control Y, oh, okay, it does get added back. Seemed to be something slightly odd there with the redo not getting applied, but anyway. But there we have. Control click, I can now just add junction after junction after junction, and this is the naughty secret they don't tell you, is you can now create loops. And well, you could always create loops, but now you really can. But because, yeah, but you're always going to get a crossover because you can't have an input wired to an input. Yeah. And then if I do something like this, it adds in a whole load more junctions. And you can go to town with making it all a bit crazy. Did that do it? Yeah. Yep, it's yet another way of creating some weird pictures, because what I have already got working is junctions can be in groups, so you can put them in a nice frame, and Node-RED comes closer to being a vector drawing program. I jest. We should check. I'm just going to reload the page, get rid of that silly squiggle. We should check if I stick them in a group. Now if I control click in here and hit junction, that's all well and good. And yes, you can see that junction is in that group. Awesome. So that's worked. Yeah. There we are. I think that's successful. I think that's a better solution than what I had started out considering, which was adding these buttons. The other one is adding an action. So when you have a bunch of wires selected, comme ça, have an action to split with a junction, but I won't do that now because, as Steve has said in the chat, he's got a pull request waiting for me to look at that adds a very similar action that will split a wire into link nodes at either end of the wire. Replaces the wire with link nodes. And if you've done some, if there's some refactoring in there, then any action I want to create to do with junctions is definitely going to stray into that territory. So we should, I should get his pull request merged before I start playing. But yeah, this is a good proof of concept. It certainly has. There's things like the fact the definition of a junction is now hard-coded in 3 places. I need to pull that out and have it more standardized. I need to have a bit more of a utility function in the internals for creating a junction. But again, that's the sort of iteration we can do once we've got something working. What happens if you try to create a loop between two junctions? Good question. Well, just as you can create a loop between two nodes, say, there is nothing in the editor stops you doing that. But yeah, you can create some stuff, and then if I cut through it, ooh man, cut through them. Oh, that didn't quite work. Anyway, Security Live. When you double click on Junction, does it open anything? What are the wires could be positioned by degrees radius so they could come out? Yeah. Double clicking on Junction does nothing. We aren't exposing any sorts of properties. The question of so that is one of the open questions in my mind, is the direction of wires in and out of a junction. There is certainly something to be said around could it be smarter? Could it decide actually in this instant? So the current routing for wires is on the basis that they're coming out the sides of nodes, so that they always curve out rather than just drop straight. So you can see how, or maybe you can't if I come down into a clear bit of workspace. You can see how the shape of the wire, in fact, yeah, you can see there's a boundary condition just there in terms of relative distances where the curves flip between two different sums or hit different thresholds. I've spent so much time tweaking this algorithm and I'm still not entirely happy with it. So, so there is something to be said if you had two junctions like that. Well, why not just draw a straight line between them? Because you could have a wire come out at any angle. The problem is directionality, and how do you know what direction messages flow? Because at the moment it's relatively easy because everything flows left to right, so you can follow this through. If this wire came let's try not to get too convoluted here. Then if in this instance this wire was to come straight in, and then, but basically the point is, as soon as you lose that consistent in on the left, out on the right, if you were zoomed in and you just saw that and you're trying to follow through a flow, by itself there's nothing to tell you what direction any of those wires flow, other than the standard that they come in on the left, out on the right. So again, it's something to look at. Next boy asks, where is the code in the project that handles wires? Well, Vue.js, which is our 6,000 line behemoth of desperately needing refactoring, but in there is a function called generate link path. So this is given a origin x and y, a destination x and y, and SC, which says, what does SC stand for? it meant something 8 years ago. It's directionality. Is it? Oh yes, it's the. Is the origin a source or a target? If that makes sense. Because if it's a source, then the origin needs to come out to the right. If it's a destination, then the origin needs to come out left. So yeah. So in here here's where we do all the maths, where in some cases it's nice smooth curves. There's a whole bunch of stuff here about modifying the different control points based on relative distances, taking into account that nodes are wider than they are tall, all that sort of stuff. Security Live option for pointers. Yeah, we do have. Did I pull request it? There is a node branch, or maybe it's in the designs repo. That is something I've been did play around with, and will look at again. So add junctions to wires, that's one we're looking at right now. No, not in here. Is it a pull request by me then? I thought author me would do the right thing. Author nullery. Oh yes, link arrowheads. So this, yeah, doing just that, adding arrowheads to the wires. One of the reasons that works is, even though both these wires have got arrowheads, because they are entering the same point and at the same angle, the arrowheads line up so they don't get really messy. And again, once you get into, if you were to have wires coming out at lots of different angles and they all have arrowheads, it could get cluttered, and it could be hard to see where arrowheads overlap, or it would need some careful work to figure that out. As far as the arrowheads goes, this was also tied with playing around with changing the port style so that it distinguished ports that have wires that are connected versus those that don't, by changing the shading of ports that are connected. I'm not so sure on that. It's quite a visual change to what a node-RED flow looks like. So whilst there are good reasons for changing the appearance so you can distinguish a connected port from a disconnected port, I'm hesitant to say that this is the right approach, just because it is a big departure from, relatively large departure from what nodes look like. So yeah, I was going to say this was 31st of December, New Year's Day, I threw that together. So, or not New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, I threw that together. So I'll go back and have a play. I may well separate out arrowheads from connected ports. There's absolutely zero reason for the two to be conflated into one pull request. And yeah, if we have arrowheads, then it'll be a Knoxville, hasn't a connected port got a wire coming out of it? Isn't that obvious enough? Yeah. For however many years that has been obvious enough. The problem comes, and this isn't too, it's slightly contrived. It's when you have a flow that does something like that. And now, I would say that that's just a bad layout, but it can happen. You end up with a node sat on top of a wire, and you've no way. There's no visual indication to tell you. Okay, bad example. It's a link out node. Let's do it with a function node. Yeah, when you look at that flow, there's absolutely no visual cue that this function node has absolutely nothing to do with the flow it appears to be part of. Yes, it's a complete red herring. So, yeah, that's the rationale for that. Anyway, 9:10. This has been useful and productive. I'm not going to commit and pull request this type search change. I want to spend a bit more time. Looking at the refactorings. And as said in the chat from Steve, look at the refactorings he's already got in place, and do some more tidy up. But it's gone from an experiment, a thought idea of a feature to this pretty committed to this now being in 3.0, which is awesome. We've got a whole bunch of stuff on the way through the pipeline for 3.0. Something we are doing a little different is we have gone through our backlog and plucked out a bunch of features we will put into. We aim for 3.0, no commitment, but targeting for 3.0. So they are on the issue tracker, and we have got a 3.0 milestone. So as stuff crops up, we throw it in here. So, if you're interested in seeing the sorts of things we have in the plan, if you're interested in contributing and just would like some inspiration for what we would like contributions on, have a look at this list, give us a shout, talk to me, talk to Steve, talk to us in Slack, the core dev channel, always a good place to come hang out. If you want to get involved, there is a bunch of stuff here that might inspire you to get involved or not, whatever. It's all good. But we've got 3.0 end of April. Someone in April. Likely, we will aim for the probably the last Thursday in April is tentatively the target, but it will all depend on just how long it takes to get through this backlog. And all that sort of stuff. So if you have suggestions for 3.0, do just come and chat on Slack. You're all friendly faces known to us. Slack's the best place just to share ideas, or the discourse forum if that's more your thing. Post them in there. Slack's more likely to get a bit more of immediate, well, not immediate, but a bit more of a chatty discussion around it. If we're around. The forum's great. You will get a pile in from the whole community of opinions, which is great. It all helps shapes ideas. But so please do share your feedback. Anything else? There's always stuff. Lots going on. But that's probably it for tonight, I think. So I'm going to wrap it there. Thank you all for joining. Always good to have a nice chat going on. I think I have caught all your messages. Just scanning back through. Thanks, Noxy Boy, on saying congrats on FlowForge, looking great. Thank you. We've got plenty still to do. But that's for another time. Otherwise, awesome. Thank you everyone for joining the chat. Thanks for all your input. Thanks for bouncing around all your ideas. Like I said, come join us in Slack if you want to chat through anything. We're usually around. If not, leave a message. Your call is important to us. We will get back to you. And with that, I'm going to go have a cup of tea. Thank you, everyone. See you next week. Same time, same place, same channel, all that. Good night.